on interior scenes, they're set up a little bit differently. We typically do not put a sunlight into them. We only light the model based on global illumination. To set my default lighting, I'm going to go again to my smooth and high, where it says smooth and highlights, go to lighting and shadows. I'm going to illuminate with scene lights, switch it back to default, and that'll gray out the model and reset it for you. If I go to the render setup, which is that button right next to the fly down, and I look under the V-Ray tab, and then environment, the only thing for lighting right now in this scene is the background of the exterior that's going to come through these windows, and then the global illumination. So there's three types of lighting that we use in renderings. There's direct sunlight, there's skylight, and there's global illumination. So of course direct sunlight is the sunlight. Skylight is the light that bounces from the sky, so we simulate that bounce off the earth globally back down onto the scene. And then we have global illumination, which is the ambient light that passes from objects to other objects that bounces off each other. So if I had a giant green bottle and I put it in the corner, I would see that light or that color of that object saturate slightly onto the color of the walls in real life. And we can simulate that in renderings too. So all I do for this scene is I just turn up my global illumination. And when I render, there's Shift Q on the keyboard. You can click yes to overwrite your interior rendering file. You'll end up with a scene that takes some light from the outside background, illuminates this side of the object, leaves most of this dark over here, and I get what looks like somebody took and torched my building, right? So I see a bunch of splotching happening on the rendering and things like that. So what that is there's lighting calculations not happening because there's no light happening there, and or I do have lighting and the light calculation is not happening. So it's twofold. It's one, my render settings are too low, and two is I don't have enough light to process with the low render settings I have currently. So what I need to do is I need to start, of course, illuminating the scene. We'll focus on the render presets a little later. We already have that set up. We know how that works, right? So the first thing I need is I need to place a fill light in here. So I know that in my scene there's a dark area. So I need to illuminate that area, right, before I start putting materials in. And that's back there on the model. If I go T for top, and Z for zoom, and then F3 on the keyboard, and zoom out some, there's this hallway. So that's that dark area. So the camera, again, is looking directly this way at the couches. I have this hallway here that's hidden from view, and I want to make it appear as if there's a whole other thing going on over here. So I'll place a light in that hallway, and it also is going to fill that corner in. So I'll hit L on the keyboard for left, and I know the hallway is somewhere around here, so I'll make a light now. So V-Ray, in addition to daylighting, has basic fill lights to work with. And then those are accessed based on the lighting toolbar. So I click on the last button of the lighting toolbar, and then I have a type of plane. I can adjust the multiplier and the color. Everything else you can pretty much ignore for now. And I just click and drag and draw a plane. Then hit escape on the keyboard to exit out of the command. Then I need to go to the front view because I see that I didn't load, right? So I want to place it in the hallway that's over here. So I would hit W on the keyboard and move that to the right. And then the arrow determines directionality of the light. So right now the light's not going to shine anywhere this way. It's only going to shine away from where my camera view is. So I need to then, I can use the mirror command. This is up here. And I'll do no clone and click OK. So then it flips my object for me really quickly. Last part is I go to the top view. I make sure that it's in that hallway. If it overshoots, if I go P for perspective and I look at this, it is overshooting the geometry. It doesn't matter because my scene is enclosed, right? My camera's enclosed. If it overshoots it, it doesn't matter if I have it bigger or smaller. I just want to make sure that the whole hallway is encompassed by this light. Right, and then I'm going to go to C for my camera view. And I'm going to select my light. And I can increase the intensity of the color. I'm just going to leave that up for now and then hit Shift Q for render. It's a little washed out, so I would decrease the intensity of it. How it's washed out is I don't see the definition here. One thing you can do to kill your rendering in post-production is make the rendering too bright to begin with. So it's okay to have a darker rendering that's balanced with light versus having a rendering that's too bright and then trying to bring out color that isn't there later on in post-production. Because you can always have a dark rendering and make it brighter, but to have a bright rendering and try and make it darker, it's really, really impossible. So I would bring the intensity of the light down. I'd really want it, this is kind of like a global kind of light. This is like an intense, strong light. So we'll go ahead and bring it down to like, 15 for the multiplier. And then the color, let's say it's the red light district of the house, so we're going to make it the red light. I hit Shift Q on the renderer, and I could also change the color along with intensity of that light. Now I want to troubleshoot my scene so I know my low quality settings on my rendering are making my thing look burnt. So I'll go to my rendering presets up at the top right. Right click, collapse all of those. And I'm going to right click again and do a medium quality. And then I'm going to push C to commit it. And then Shift Q on the keyboard. Now if I wanted to, in the back, I see that, this lamp is here. I need to obviously make the lamp have some type of light coming out of it. In that case, the lamp is going to spread light up and down. So for that, instead of using two plane lights, which is an option, or I can do a double-sided plane, I can load in a spherical light. So again, I'll go to my top view, so T for top, and I'm going to select my lamp, and I'm going to zoom into it, so Z for zoom. So now I'm on my lamp. And then I click on the button for light. And I'm going to just make a generic plane, hit escape, and then select my light with it still selected, go to its modifier properties, and change it to a spherical light. The color and the intensity on the multiplier will take on whatever you made last time. So my color's already set up for me. I can go to the front view. And my light will be placed all the way at 0, 0, so I'll need to move my light up into place. And then my intensity, I'm going to crank it up to 50 because it's got to shine out of the object. Right? It's not like a plane light where it's just got no obstructions. This one does have obstructions. And I want to see it on the wall wash, things of that nature. So I hit C for camera, and I see my spherical light in place, and then I can click render. Now these guys are wall washing, so I want to have them point towards the wall, so they're kind of like an indirect illumination on the wall. So I'll select one of them, go to my front view, Z for zoom. All right, and we're going to make two lights, one of an instance of another. So again, I'll go to light, and in this case, a plane is fine. I click, and I draw, and I kind of want it, on this one, I kind of want it the same size of my object here. So I'll select my object and zoom, so it's in the window. Select my light again. I kind of want it just a little bit bigger than the actual fixture. And then up until now, my lights have been visible, so I can see the geometry of the light. In this case, since it's going beyond the extent of the geometry, in the properties of that light, I want to make sure that invisible is checked. So now I won't see the light. The next set of lights we'll do, we'll make them visible so we can mimic overhead lighting. Right, so again, I got to go to the top view, and I'm going to align this so it sits just behind the fixture and almost on the wall. And then I'll hold down Shift and drag over another one so it makes an instance of that. So if I change the intensity, light intensity, which is at 50 on this one, it's going to also change this one. So if I change this one, it's vice versa. So this one goes to 35. Since this is an instance, it's also 35. Go back to my camera view, and if I click render again, we'll see the effect that that does. Right, and even then they might be a little too intense, right? So you see, when we talk about balance of light, on the right, these two are balanced really nicely, right? Their sheen is about the same. The intensity of the shine is the same. Here, these are really intense. So maybe that's the effect I want. And that's because they're closer to the wall. So I would need to adjust that as well. But that's how we do highlights. The last part is to do a standard light for a spotlight, and we're going to place in some overhead ceiling lights. So let's do the overhead ceiling lights, and then the last part is we'll do a spotlight on our actual table. Right, because over here it's still even dark in the scene. Right, so I'll go T for top, and Z for zoom again. And if I rotate around, I know that my geometry starts on this line. So we'll count 1, 2, 3. My ceiling plane starts 3 squares over. Yeah, that's fine. I like strips. Screw it. I'll do strips. I'll do some strip lighting. So I go F for front, and I'm going to elevate my light so it's almost on the ceiling plane, but not quite. There. And then I'll go to my camera view, C, so I can start to, in perspective, look at how these lights are going to go. So maybe I'm going for a pattern effect or whatever it may be. I'm going to click on it. And before I do that, I want to make sure now this one is visible, because then it's going to give me the mimicking effect that I have a light fixture there, even though I may not. And I don't have to model the thing. And so I'm going to click and shift-click over and do an instance of that. And maybe we'll do another one there. Do another one closer, another one over here, another one here, right? And maybe this one's pulled back in view, maybe this one's over here and a little bit farther away in view, maybe this one's right here, maybe this one's doing what the other one did, right? So it's up to you. You're the painter of the picture. If I click render on that one, my whole scene begins to illuminate, and I get the effect I was looking for of lighting fixtures on the ceiling. So you see how it begins to, as we multiply light, it begins to really start to bring out definition in the other light. So we always start really dark and slowly layer up the lighting as we go. Because it's like I said, even with rendering, when we're even doing the rendering, it's easier to bring the thing down than it is to, or it's easier to bring the thing brighter than it is to try and get it darker. Once it's too bright, it's too bright. The last part of this is I want to make a circular kind of spotlight right here in my rendering, because it's weighted, kind of heavy up here, not so much down there. So I go to T for top, Z for zoom, And in this case, I can't access the lights here. And the reason why I don't have a button for it is it's under the standard lighting panel. So under my command panel, you'll see a lighting toggle. And then you'll see the fly down where it says V-Ray. So it's create panel, lights, V-Ray fly down. We're going to do a standard light. And we're going to do a target spotlight. So I'm going to click and drag for my spotlight there. I'm going to do front and hit W on the keyboard to elevate my spotlight. Make sure it's still inside my building, so you don't want to go beyond the plane here of those lights. Right, and I can drag that down. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my C for camera, click render. Now, hopefully that didn't wash us out too much. Right, so you can see now the spotlight, how it spreads, picks up here. So that's not really what I wanted. The spotlight's too big of a cone. Right, I really want it just to highlight right here. The intensity is a little large. So what I can do is go to my perspective view, zoom out a little bit, select my light, and I can see where my cone is laying. Go C for view. What I can do is under the intensity, my multipliers are different, so I'm going to take that down to 0.1, switch my color out. Maybe I want my color to highlight a little brighter. Let's see. Do V-Ray shadows are on. And then my fall off, right, is going to be where it begins to decay. And then my hot spot and beam is going to be how much of a hot spot I have. Then I can take my target. And there we go. So you see when I adjusted the hot spot, my fall off value was that outer ring, and then my hot spot value was that inner ring. And that's it. So that's fill lighting, interior lighting, wall washing, setting up fixtures to make it look like it, so on and so forth. So if I look at this, my rendering on the screen looks pretty good, right? I could take it to Photoshop and I can brighten up the scene.